Are you and Texas part of this group of attorneys general that's looking into whether Google presents an antitrust or consumer protection case?
We absolutely are. We have serious concerns about both of those issues that you've talked about. Both antitrust, just the power and the wealth of these companies. We have a history in this country of looking at those issues and breaking up companies that are too big. And then we also have concerns about privacy. The lack of transparency in how they collect this information, the lack of transparency of how they use this information. Consumers are not being paid for this. And there are also vulnerable populations like children who are getting their data gathered, and we have no protections there for them.
So Google did release a statement in response to this probe, if you will, or early stages of a probe into Google, saying privacy and security are built into all of our products, and we will continue to engage constructively with state attorneys general on policy issues. What kind of action, given all of your concerns, do you think needs to be taken against Google?
Well, I think we just need to get more information from them. A lot of the questions are answered with very general answers about analytics, and so there's not a lot of clarity for state attorney generals to understand exactly what they're doing with this data, what they're doing with our data. I've heard that, Google has literally, thousands and thousands of data points on every consumer that uses them, and knows more about you than you do. So it is a little concerning that most consumers are not aware of the just massive data that these companies have, and then how they're using it and selling it, and obviously the consumer is not getting any of that money.
Now, I'm sure you're very well aware of Senator Elizabeth Warren's proposal to break up big tech at this point. Here's what she had to say at South by Southwest about a week and a half ago about her proposal.
That opportunity to do what you do best, to come up with a great idea, to work your heart out to make it happen, to be able to compete on a level playing field, is taken away by these platform giants. So my view is break those things apart, and we will have a much more competitive, robust market in America.
You've got Republicans on your side of the aisle, like Ted Cruz, agreeing with her, at least in principle. Do you think big tech needs to be broken up?
Look, I'm not sure yet, but I certainly have concerns. I've talked to a lot of their competitors who are being pushed out of the marketplace, and they have no choice in how they respond because there's such control by a company like Google that controls about 89% of the searches. And so it does put these companies, smaller companies, these startups either get purchased or they get pushed out of the marketplace. And so there are concerns about competitiveness and companies be able to start up and compete.
Now, Republicans generally resist the government getting too involved in the private marketplace. What makes this time different, or this situation different?
So, we're definitely tend to be free market. We want lots of competition. That's the key word, competition. But when you have companies that dominate the marketplace becoming almost monopolistic, well, then competition goes away, and then you have this argument that consumers may be harmed. And obviously, the European Union has already fined Google, billions of dollars in 2 different cases. And so there are concerns about just the competitiveness and the opportunity to go create products that Google doesn't push out of the marketplace.
How do you feel, given your concerns about data? How do you feel about Facebook specifically? And would you be interested in taking on, a similar exploration of whether Facebook deserves some of this scrutiny as well?
Certainly, we are looking at the companies like Facebook and Google. It's not just limited to those 2 companies. It's any of these giant companies that are dominating the marketplace and potentially harming consumers and causing consumers to be in a position where all of this data is controlled by 1 company or 2 companies or 3 companies, and the consumer doesn't have access to it, they don't get paid for it, and they don't know how it's being used.
Do you think consumers should get paid for their data?
Hey, look, I think that should be looked at. I mean, this is incredibly valuable information when you know so much about every consumer, and you're selling that data, and the consumer doesn't even know. There ought to at least be some greater transparency involved so the consumer realizes what they're turning over to these companies.
So if you're looking at Google and Facebook and, as you say, other big tech companies, is it fair to say you're also looking at Amazon and Apple and Microsoft?
Look, we're just beginning this. We don't necessarily have specific companies that we've targeted, but we are looking at a broad range of companies that control a lot of the marketplace and trying to determine, You know, are they involved in viewpoint discrimination? Are they protecting consumer data? How do we get more transparency in the process so consumers are treated fairly and their information is protected? Because we don't know how much these companies are protecting consumer data and who they're selling it to.
Now, last year, we reported that this exploration of Google came out of this meeting with then Attorney General Jeff Sessions out of a concern that these tech companies were suppressing conservative views. Were you at that meeting with then Attorney General Sessions?
No, I couldn't attend. I had other people in my office at that meeting. We are concerned about this. I mean, we had this just happen this week in our Texas Senate. The Texas Senate caucus put up a Facebook post about a born alive bill to protect children that are born alive from being aborted after they're alive. And that content was taken down by Facebook. They were arguing that that was engagement bait. And then they also took down another Facebook post by an individual senator that talked about that issue. I don't know what engagement bait is. I thought engagement is what they wanted. I thought free speech was what they wanted, but that is certainly an issue that is coming up more and more often.
So do you believe this is deliberate or inadvertent by Facebook?
It's hard to know because it seems relatively planned. I mean, they don't seem to have great answers for why this post versus another post and why that's engagement bait, and hundreds like it are not engagement bait. They always claim they've got some analytics or they've got some algorithm, but we can never seem to get an information on what that algorithm's actually doing.
Now, meantime, there's a lot of concern about the video of the mass shooting that was uploaded onto Facebook and then shared on Facebook hundreds of thousands of times. Facebook was unable to stop it 300,000 times from being posted on the platform. What sort of role do you think the states should have in these issues?
Look, we're talking First Amendment here. Free speech is dangerous. It allows people to talk about all kinds of things that we may not like personally. But I think free speech ought to be very, very broad and very, very protected. It was something the founders, listed first. Obviously, religious expression being something else that was protected. So I think we got to be very careful at obviously government limiting speech. But if businesses are going to limit speech, they need to be transparent about what they're doing, and they need not to falsely advertise that somehow this is free speech when they are controlling content.